Close your eyes. Take a slow breath in. Let the room quiet down. Just a little more. Because tonight, we are entering the mind of a man who doubted everything, so he could discover what is real. A man who walked away from fame, from power, from prestige, just to answer one question. What is certainty? This is the world of Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. A world where reason rises, then collapses, and the heart takes over what the mind cannot reach. Settle in. Let your breathing soften. And let the story begin. Al-Ghazali lived in a time when the world of knowledge was exploding. Philosophers like Ibn Sina and Al-Farabi were building grand systems based on Greek reasoning. Theologians were defending faith against waves of intellectual challenge. Sufis were withdrawing from society to polish the mirror of the soul. And Al-Ghazali stood in the center of all of this. A brilliant mind, a rising star, a scholar every city wanted. But inside him, a storm was growing. A storm of doubt. He knew the arguments. He knew the logic. He could silence any opponent. But the truth remained distant, unfelt, unlived. And then, one day, his voice broke. His heart trembled. His tongue refused to move. It was as if the universe cut him off from speaking words. He no longer felt. Before we go deeper, tell me something. Where are you right now? And what time is it where you are listening to this? Hold that moment in your mind. Because this journey needs you to be fully here. Now breathe again. And let's continue. Because this crisis was the breaking point of Al-Ghazali's entire philosophy. He realized something terrifying. He could explain God, but he could not feel God. He could argue for truth, but he did not taste certainty. And so, he walked away from the greatest teaching position in the Islamic world, from status, from applause. He left Baghdad, as if escaping a burning building. He traveled alone, quiet, inward-focused, seeking something beyond words. This is where his philosophy truly begins. Because Al-Ghazali learned that the mind alone cannot carry the weight of existence. Reason is sharp. Reason is powerful. Reason can illuminate much. But reason has limits. He did not reject logic. He refined it. He mastered it. He used it against the very philosophers who worshipped it. In his famous work, The Incoherence of the Philosophers, he confronted 20 major claims of the philosophers of his age. Some he accepted. Some he respected. But others he tore apart completely. He argued that philosophers overstepped the boundaries of proof. That they treated assumptions as absolute truth. That they built worlds in their minds and claimed those worlds reflected reality. Al-Ghazali said no. He said that reason is a lamp, not the sun. It can guide you in a dark room, but it cannot illuminate the entire universe. This is why he rejected the philosopher's belief in an eternal universe. He rejected their belief that God only knows universals, not the details of our lives. He rejected the idea that the afterlife is purely spiritual. For him, these claims were not only wrong, they were dangerous, because they reduced God to a distant force, instead of an intimate presence. But Al-Ghazali did not oppose philosophy to destroy knowledge. He opposed it to protect it, to bring it back to its proper place. He believed reason must bend to revelation, not as a surrender, but as a completion. Revelation gives what reason cannot reach: the unseen, the eternal, the soul, the afterlife, the purpose behind existence. Reason, by itself, is too thin to carry such truths. But this is only half of the story. The other half lies in the heart. Al-Ghazali believed that the heart has an eye, a spiritual eye, a light that sees what the intellect can only theorize. He compared the heart to a mirror. When it is covered with ego, with desire, with anger, with pride, the mirror rusts. It reflects nothing. But when a person disciplines the soul, when they purify their intentions, when they detach from illusions, the mirror begins to shine. And when it shines, divine light falls upon it. That light is certainty. Not logical certainty. Not argumentative certainty. A certainty that is felt more deeply than any proof. This is the knowledge of prophets, saints, and seekers. And it became the core of Al-Ghazali's philosophy. He wrote that the Sufis are not dreamers, not emotion-driven mystics, but the true inheritors of inner knowledge. He said, "I learned with certainty that the Sufi path is the real path." For him, Sufism was not an escape from intellect. It was a completion of intellect. A movement from knowing to being. A shift from thinking about truth to living in truth. This is why he wrote his masterpiece, Ihya Ulum al-Din, The Revival of the Religious Sciences. A book that merges law, ethics, psychology, spirituality, philosophy, and religion into a unified whole. In this work, he describes the inner anatomy of the human being, the nafs, the ego, the restless self, the qalb, the heart, the center of spiritual reception, the aql, the intellect, the ruh, the spirit, the divine breath within. Each one of these elements pulls the human being in different directions, and the struggle between them defines the story of every soul. Al-Ghazali believed true ethics comes from healing this inner conflict. Virtue is born when the ego is disciplined, when the heart is polished, when the intellect is balanced, and when the spirit rises. He saw morality not as external rules, but as the reflection of an inner condition. A person is patient, not because they force themselves to be, but because their heart has found alignment. A person is humble, not because they pretend to be, but because the mirror inside no longer shows pride. In this sense, ethics is spiritual psychology, and psychology is the battlefield between self and self. Now breathe again. Feel how slowly the pace is moving. Because this is how Al-Ghazali wants us to think. Not rushed. Not pressured. But aware. Reflective. Present. He also believed that the universe is not a machine running on autopilot. He rejected the idea that cause and effect have their own independent power. Instead, he argued that every event, every motion, every spark, every breath, is created by God. Continuously. Fire does not burn cotton. Because fire has an inherent power. Fire burns cotton. Because God creates burning. When fire touches cotton. This view, called occasionalism, keeps the universe in constant connection with its creator. There is no gap between God and the world. Every moment is a new act of creation. Every second is divine attention. This makes miracles possible, makes prayer meaningful, and makes existence a living, breathing expression of God's will. Now we enter one of the deepest layers of his philosophy: free will and predestination. Al-Ghazali stood between two extremes. On one hand, humans choose. We intend. We are responsible. On the other hand, God creates our actions. Our choice does not create the action. It only acquires it. This balance, called kasb, keeps human life meaningful, while preserving divine power. But the deepest truth of Al-Ghazali's philosophy comes from his own journey. He was a man who conquered the world of knowledge, broke under the weight of doubt, escaped his own fame, purified his heart, and returned with a vision that unified intellect, faith, and inner experience. He taught that truth is not in books alone, not in debates alone, not in rituals alone. Truth is in the heart that has been polished to reflect divine light. For Al-Ghazali, the purpose of philosophy is transformation, to become real, to become sincere, to become awake. And so, as we reach the end of this slow, drifting journey, take one more breath. Let the room settle again. Let your thoughts exhale.